This is Continuum Drag, a weekly podcast where we watch sci-fi, fantasy, and everything in between.
This week, Sliders, Season 4, Episode 16, and Season 5, Episode 1.
Yeah, last time I looked, our Maggie didn't have a computer chip in the back of her head. Now, you gotta be a double, and not from this world. You slid with us, right?
Yes.
Where is she?
I couldn't stay there. They were killing me.
Where is she?
Look what they did to me.
We'll do whatever we can for you, but we are going back to get our...
Welcome to Continuum Drag, the podcast by two floating heads in jars. I'm Luke, here with my co-host Jordan. What's real, Jordan?
Hold on, I got something real. It was a line from one of these episodes, and the person said, "You want to talk? Go jack in." That should be our new catchphrase. Go jack in.
You're always jacking in, Jordan.
Yeah, I'm always jacking in. You know, someone was like jack off, and they're like, "You can't say that." Like, well, just jack in. Jack in works.
I don't think that was the conversation.
Yeah, it was. That was the conversation. Someone had it in the script. It said jack off. They said, "You can't say that," and they're like, "Why?" Like, because. And so they said, "Oh, I'll just put it at jack in." They're like, "Yeah, that's cool."
Yeah, so they're like, in the original, they're like, "Let's go tell Maggie to jack off."
Yeah, that's right. Go tell her to jack off.
All right, well, save that for your behind-the-scenes fanfiction. Because this week we are finishing Season 4 and starting the final season of Sliders, Season 5. And we've brought back one of our classic guests who watched some of the Season 1 episodes with us. Welcome back to the podcast, Jane.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
So you were here when we did the beginning of Sliders months and months and months ago. I don't remember. Which episodes did you do?
So I did I can't remember the names of the episode, but I did the episode where they were in the alternate universe they didn't realize was the alternate universe, and Professor Arturo turned evil, and they built a statue of him, and then it turned out to be the Azure Gate Bridge instead of the Golden Gate Bridge. So they all like showed their true colors of being kind of terrible people, except for Quinn, who tried to get everyone to realize that it wasn't their actual homeworld. And then
that sounds like classic literature compared to what the show is now.
I know, right? And then the second episode I did with you guys was the first appearance of the Cro-Mags.
Of course, the Cro-Mags. Who we actually, considering the fact that in Season 4 and 5, they're the main enemy, we have not seen a single Cro-Mag episode.
No, they just keep talking about them.
They mentioned them twice in these episodes.
It comes up all the time, like, "You're not a Cro-Mag, are you?" I'm like, ugh, okay, enough with the Cro-Mags.
I mean, without going into detail, Jane, like, we're going to get into these episodes here, but, like, do you notice... other than, there's some cast changes, so like things have changed that way. But did you notice a major shift in Sliders coming back to like these very late season episodes?
Yeah, I mean, I noticed a big difference. And it's a little bit hard to describe, and maybe it'll be better at describing it once we've actually gone through the episodes. But it's the soul of the show is like completely missing. Like every episode just seems to be about this very sort of expositional, technical, plotty kind of going back and forth and finding this person and getting that person and crossing over to here or there. There seems to be like no thematic or philosophical thought of any kind that has gone into either of these episodes. And that's a very generic thing to say, but I think as we go through it, it will become maybe what I'm saying will be.
No, I think that's very on the nose. I think you're right. I think there is no bigger idea behind any episode anymore on Sliders. It's just like, it's an action-y, plot-heavy, go, and then it's over.
Yeah, and none of the characters have any real character to them.
No.
They just have lines and things that they do. Like, literally, you could interchange any of the actions that take place, could be pretty much almost any character. There is an exception in the first episode of this that we're watching today. But, yeah, overall, like, they don't each have like the characters themselves don't have unique perspectives on their circumstances, and they don't come from a certain direction at any point. They just all kind of say stuff and do stuff, and then the episode ends.
Well, they're all just little chess pieces on a board, moving as required.
Yeah.
Before we get into the episodes, though, Jordan has a little segment, especially for Jane.
Uh-oh.
Oh, yeah, how do you want to do this? So it's a fan fiction segment.
Oh no, I hate these so much. Okay, sorry, go. It's okay.
I have a bunch of stories. Jane, do you want to pick which one I should read?
Yes, I have to pick it because these like Jordan reads internet porn segments are my least favorite parts of your podcast. I should just mention right now.
I'll say this, that Luke picked all these, so there will be very little sexy time in this. There's one that does have a little bit. I'm hoping you choose it, but I'm not going to tell you which one.
Oh God. Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you the titles. You can narrow them down, and then if you need more, I can tell you like a little summary too.
All right.
But just try to do it based on the title, and we'll go from there. Okay.
Okay.
Story the first is called "Fixing Things Up."
Okay.
The way you pronounced it, though, really makes it sound sexy.
Yeah,
Jordan.
yeah. I'll do that for each of them. This next one, "A Lesson in Objectification."
Oh God. Okay.
The next one, "All Weeds to Flowers."
Okay.
Then we've got "A Long Overdue Reunion."
Okay.
"Sliders Reborn."
Ooh.
"Forgotten."
Okay.
"I'll Be Home for Christmas."
Christmas episode.
"In the Wrong Song, but the lyrics still fit." And finally, 24 Hours in the Life.
Ooh.
Any of those tickle your fancy?
Well, I'm on the fence between Sliders Reborn and 24 Hours in a Life. Luke, what do you think?
Oh, I am agnostic on this. I've picked too many of them. They've gone too badly.
Let's go with Sliders Reborn.
Okay, Sliders Reborn. This is written by iReactions. And the summary is, in 1995, Quinn, Wade, Rembrandt, and Arturo found the gateway to parallel worlds. 20 years later, the adventure begins again.
Oh, so this is taking place, in 2025? 2015, maybe.
Yeah, and I haven't looked. I only skimmed this. This one's taking place in the year 2000.
Wait, that's not 20 years later?
Yeah, somehow it is. It's taking place in the year 2000. Maybe they mean 2020. Either way, it's taking place in the year 2000, and it's weirdly written not as a short story, but as a script.
Oh,
It's in screenplay format?
I'll read you the stage directions too.
okay.
You'll do voices, I'm sure.
Yeah, sure. Okay, here we go. On a blank screen, February 4th, 2000. Fade to interior warehouse storage room. We've seen this warehouse before. We've seen this storage room before. In fact, we've seen this scene before. The Sliders of Season 5, Mallory, Maggie, Diana, and Rembrandt, and also Amanda Mallory, and the Seer, as we all remember them. The Seer is seated in a chair, weak and limp, the life ebbing from his tired body. Mrs. Mallory is tending to him. Rembrandt stands by her side. This might be a good one to pick, because I think this is Season 5 cast.
This makes no sense to me already, but just please continue.
I think we're hearing the final episode of Sliders.
Diana is working with the sliding machine. Should we explain who Diana is?
No, it's fine. Don't explain.
We're going to find her in one of the episodes we're going to watch. Diana is working with the sliding machine as Maggie and Mallory observe. She triggers the machine. It opens a vortex, but it's a small, red, sickly vortex, fading in and out. Diana says, "The device is too badly damaged. There's only enough power to get one of us through. We better decide who's going. Fast!" And then Rembrandt moves from the Seer and Mrs. Mallory. I'm guessing that's his mom. He produces the vial containing the blood that holds the anti-Chromag virus and the needle. Maggie and Mallory turn to see Rembrandt injecting himself, all caps. Rembrandt, just call me Typhoid Remy. Just call me Typhoid Remy. He strides towards the tiny vortex. It looks barely enough to carry him to the next world. That's the sentence. "If I survive this Seer, he'll know the coast is clear," gesturing to the sliding machine. "Just fix that thing and you'll slide with me, all right?" Beat. "If not, then you'll have a good life." He claps Mallory on the shoulder and hugs him, embracing both this fragment of his old friend and the new one as well. Rembrandt continued, "Take care, Mallory." He moves to Diana, puts his hands onto her cheeks as Diana's face swells with grief. Rembrandt, "I'm counting on you, all right?" He hugs Diana, and then after releasing her, he reaches for Maggie, the person who slid with him the longest, the one who knows him the best, meeting her agonized face with a smile. Rembrandt, "We're family." He kisses her forehead tenderly as she cries, a final hug for her as well, before he steps through the fragile vortex of whatever awaits him on the other side. With that final look back, Rembrandt and Brown leap into the vortex. The vortex sputters and closes. Rembrandt is gone. Maggie, Mallory, and Diana turn to the Seer's slumped form and Mrs. Mallory. Maggie, she's desperate. "Mr. LeBeau, can you see our friend?" Silence. Diana presses the finger to the Seer's neck. Diana, "Can't find a pulse." Mrs. Mallory, and she's resigned. He's gone. And Maggie and Mallory and Diana stand in horror above the seer's body. Maggie wraps her arms around a worried Diana, comforting both her friend and herself. Mallory stares blankly at where Rembrandt vanished. Mallory. What do we do now? Oh my gosh, this just keeps going. Flash cut to the inside of the vortex. The streams of energy that form the walls of the interdimensional tunnel race past us. Flash cut to an empty alleyway. Day. The vortex opens and spits Rembrandt out. He drops to his feet as the vortex collapses behind him. Rembrandt is shaken, dazed. He stands awkwardly, but our angle on him keeps shifting and panning back and forth, reflecting the sudden dizziness in Rembrandt's eyes. He rubs the spot in his arm where he injected himself. His head is suddenly spinning. He's having a reaction of some kind. His dizziness overwhelms him and he collapses to the ground. We pull back to a distance from Rembrandt's unmoving but breathing form in his empty alley. We suddenly speed ramp in a spinning camera movement. They have a lot of direction here.
You don't do put this much camera direction in a script, typically.
No, I know. Just for anyone writing, you don't need to do this. The directors don't want this. Rotating to show the mouth of the alley, and we see the three figures rushing into the alley. Seen at a distance, their faces aren't clearly visible, but they appear to be tall, flannel-wearing figures with moppy hair, a petite woman with pixie-ish brown hair, and a stout, broad man in a long coat.
Who could they be, Jordan?
I know. And honestly, these directions, you don't need to tell people the camera angles. No one cares about this. We go to see a side angle of Rembrandt, see his eyes slowly opening, and we see the legs of the three figures standing over his side. Rembrandt. What? And then the figures standing above Rembrandt speak, but we still see only their legs as they're standing over Rembrandt. Quinn off camera. It's him. Or it looks like him. Wade, check his quantum signature. Rembrandt closes his eyes as though he's experiencing a wave of pain. From off camera, there's a click and a beep. Wade, off camera. Quinn, it's him. We found our Rembrandt. Rembrandt's eyes open. The pain has passed for a moment, but his head is still spinning. We close on Rembrandt to see a flannel-sleeved arm go to Rembrandt's shoulder. They're really holding this secret, huh?
Well, it's because these are all doubles. They didn't get the original actors back.
Yeah, that's right. Quinn, off camera. It's okay, Remy. We've been looking for you. Rembrandt's face fills with defiant denial even as his consciousness begins to fade. He mutters, Rembrandt, this can't be happening. Cue ball's gone. Wade and the professor are dead. His eyes roll back and he starts to pass out, and we go to Rembrandt's point of view. We see the figures standing over him appear to be Quinn Mallory, Wade Wells, and Professor Arturo. Big surprise.
Oh my god. I never saw it coming.
No way.
Yeah, I know. The sunlight behind them keeps their faces in the dark. You're right, Luke. They couldn't get the real cast. But then sunlight shifts and we see their faces in focus. It is indeed Quinn, Wade, and Arturo. In this single shot, the three of them look so young, it's like they stepped out of season 2 because they've aged so much in
They
2 years.
de-aged them. Hell yeah.
Yeah, they de-aged them. Yeah, Harrison Ford styles. Arturo, we are sliders, Mr. Brown. A smile. You should know by now that nothing is impossible. We go to a wide angle of Quinn, Wade, and Arturo standing over a fallen Rembrandt. On this, we fade to black. And on this empty screen, the roar of the vortex and the trademark sliders whisper is the last thing we hear. Sliders. And that's it. You know, that wasn't bad.
That's the
Wait, so the story is he goes through the vortex and meets the originals, and then it's
That's
over.
right.
That's the end of the story.
And they were waiting for him.
Right. And he has a Chromeg virus or something. I guess that must be part of the series finale.
He was Typhoid Remy.
Is that how they end the show? They like introduce a pandemic to an entire civilization?
I'm not sure.
We'll find out.
Not one person said, go jack in.
No.
Didn't catch on, I
Sad.
guess. Not in Sliders Reborn. That's what I don't understand. I thought this would be like the beginning of a new series, but it just sounds like it's like you go back in time and then do season 2 again.
Yeah.
The person was sad that about the new cast. They're like, what if they went back and had the cast I liked?
Are you guys planning on watching through to the final, or like a few more episodes to get to the finale?
We always watch the finale.
Well, I don't know. I couldn't remember if you guys had just paused on Sliders or pulled the escape pod.
No, it was paused. We're back right now. You're about to watch more Sliders. What did you watch?
Well, I didn't know if I was. I thought maybe I was watching Sliders for charity. Like, I don't know what's going on.
No one requested you for charity. God, I hope we don't have people requesting special guests for charity. That'd be so much of scheduling pain.
No, I thought they were requesting Sliders for charity.
No one would request this show.
No. But you guys hated it so much.
Yeah, it didn't fall below the cutoff point, so we're still here.
All right.
Episode 16.
Awesome. Let's do it.
Here's the IMDb summary for Season 4, Episode 16, Slide by Wire. Maggie's double leaves her stranded on a militarized world where she is united with her dead husband's double.
All right.
I'm going to say one thing off the beginning. When this character first showed up, I said to Luke, she seems like a really bad actress.
Oh my God.
And then I thought, well, that's maybe not fair because they aren't giving her a very good material. But I'm going to go back to my original thought. She's a terrible actress.
She's so bad. That's like one of the first things that I
She's
of
really bad.
complained about after watching this first episode. I'm like, who is this person? Why are they main character? And why are they such a bad actress?
She was worth it. It was worth removing Wade Wells for her. That's for sure. That's what the network knew for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I was a little bit disoriented, obviously, at the beginning of this episode because I didn't even know that she was a main character. But I figured it out pretty quickly.
The only thing worse than her acting is her action sequences.
Well, we open on Maggie, speaking of her, and she's in this high-tech military facility, and she's running around, she's knocking people out, she's stealing these little circular chips off some, like, comatose man on some sort of, like, high-tech bed with, like, wires running in and out of him. And then she, like, runs out of the base and sees the sliders getting ready to slide. She's like, wait for me, and they all, like, slide away together.
Luke, you missed the most important part of this whole sequence.
What's that?
Where for no reason she gets undressed.
Yes, she takes her top off for no reason.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know there was a reason.
Yeah, but it's so shameless. Like, there's no reason. She's like, well, I guess I better just take my top off. And you're like, okay,
Yeah.
you do you.
But then she puts another top on. Like, I didn't even understand what she like got to the door, took off her shirt,
I know.
put on another shirt.
It's just a line of dialogue. She could have just went like, I'm itchy.
But as she slides away, the camera pans over and reveals, what's this? Another Maggie yelling, don't slide with her. She's not the real me.
Yeah, which is like a plot we've seen now about 45 times, which is the wrong person's there, and whatever reason, our characters are so dumb they can't figure it out, even though the person acts completely different. And they've been sliding to different worlds, and they know there's doubles.
Yeah, although when we first watched the show together, when we did it last time, you guys were bemoaning the fact that there weren't enough doubles. Early on, you were kept saying that you wish there were more doubles, and then
Yeah.
when there was a double Arturo, you were really excited about it. But now I guess they've gone to that well too many times.
No, it's not the doubles that are the problem, but we've seen now, especially in these late seasons, is they will bump into a double, and that double will behave completely like opposite of a character they've known for, weeks to years, and these sliders are unable to recognize the difference. And that's become like a
Right.
trend where the sliders can't tell doubles apart, despite them being personality-wise utterly different.
Yeah, I did have many questions during the period where they did not recognize that she was a double, and she was very clearly acting strangely.
Yes, well, this episode splits into basically two separate plots. One with the real Maggie who's left behind on this world, and the one with the double Maggie who goes with the sliders. And so I think I'm going to focus on what the double gets up to first, because they don't really cross over till the end, and I think it'll be easier to discuss this way.
And I'm just going to say right off the bat, I don't understand the real Maggie. I don't understand what she's actually trying to do the entire time.
Well, we'll get into it, because that's the second part of what we're going to talk about.
Yeah. Just saying.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think I really understood that either. There are a number of things I didn't understand about several of these things, but okay.
Okay. Well, the sliders, when they slide off with double Maggie, they seem to land on a medieval Earth. The Earth they land on is, they quickly discover, has outlawed technology, a concept we've seen before, but that's what's happening on this world. So they all live in, like, medieval times.
Yeah. But like sort of.
Sort of, yeah. And what they see very quickly is a man who is thrown into a nuclearly irradiated room. It's like glowing green because he had a CRT monitor in his home.
Yeah, this is clearly an anti-tech post-nuclear war society. So, like, there had been some kind of nuclear thing that happened. There's various devices that have like the radioactive symbol on them, but now the society is existing as this sort of medieval style Luddite collective.
Yeah, there's a group of like anti-tech Inquisition people who like they were governed by laws that like say no technology, and like at some point they show us the book they follow. They're like, this is the like religious text we follow, and it's just the quote El Diablo nuclear generating facility operating manual. And I was just like, I don't see how you get much out of that, but okie dokie.
But it's hilarious later because it actually turns out to be like the HR manual, like the human resources manual that like describes how you're supposed to deal with employees if they're not following the rules, and they've taken this to mean this is how you deal with people who are acting against society. It's really funny.
My biggest issue with this and basically late season Sliders is something you mentioned at the beginning, Jane, which is there's no real thought or theme or moral or idea behind this. Like, they've decided to go to medieval world for no real reason, and they've given it very little thought or any real explanation. It's not really important at all, and they just were like, yeah, medieval world, and that's all you get.
Well, I can tell you exactly what this is, because as we've said, there's like these people who are in the Inquisition, they're dressed like they're medieval, and Jane, you said they have like little radioactive signs like embroidered into their clothes. This is just one of the writers had read Cantasil for Leibowitz, and this is the dumbest down version they could come up with. They're like, how can we dumb this down to like the most basic concept?
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like the only purpose of the any alternate world is to just put the group in peril. Like, it's like, oh, they're going to be threatened by whatever this world is. It doesn't matter what the world is. There's no conversation about what the meaning behind it is or the theme behind it. It's just like, let's just make it so it's not safe for them. But also, can I note that this is where it also started to bother me, and maybe you guys are past this because you've watched this so much now, but they also don't seem to be trying to blend in at all. They're
That's
just
my
there.
favorite
They're
part.
walking around. They're not concerned that they might not have the right clothing. They're not concerned that they might not be acting the right way. They are also completely fine with just chatting to people in the world and asking questions that, like, maybe they should know the answer to, but they're not worried that someone's going to find them out. It was very, like, anticlimactic, I guess.
It's very true. They arrive and they're like, we need to keep a low profile since we have technology, but everyone is dressed like a peasant from like the 1600s, and they just walk around in their jeans and jackets, not even attempting to like blend in, and nobody bothers no one. They're just like, oh, look at these strangers.
Because it's symptomatic of how lazy the show is and how lazy it's become. It's why do they just talk to people without caring about consequences? Because the writers don't care. Why do they not have to get clothing to blend in? Because they don't care. Why is it medieval world? Does it have any sort of reason for it being there? Does it have like anything that matters to the plot? Nah, they just don't care. So it's just like, but like, you picked this world. You could have picked any world. It could have been Lego world where all the bricks are Lego. It could be anything you wanted. They picked a world that they're not interested in. So it's like, why should I, as a viewer, be interested?
Yeah. And they seem to be living at an inn or a hotel semi-regularly now. Is that part of the plot of the show, that they're always staying in the same place?
We saw it early in the like first couple seasons too, but they've really like established it late in these seasons. The idea being that just like there's a hotel they always meet at after they slide into anywhere. It's a fail safe if they get separated kind of thing. But which is fine. I think that we saw a little bit. I think in the first couple of seasons they kept going to the same motel, but now that they've moved to LA, there's a very specific hotel in LA they go to. So that's fairly consistent at least. But it's I guess it's just a rally point they can rely on every time. But as we sort of mentioned earlier, the double they brought with them, she like could not be any more obvious about. She's like, when they land on this world, the first thing the double says, she's like, wow, I've never experienced anything like sliding before. And all of the characters are like, okay. And I'm like, she just said she's never slid in her life. None of you have any follow-up questions.
Yeah. And then she's just as excited about the horses and wants to go horseback riding and doesn't seem to care about it. And it's just sort of like, she's so very obviously not on the same wavelength as these guys.
Yeah, she spends most of this episode in this medieval world like flirting with Quinn and buying strange blue science fiction fruit.
And she also has a gigantic like bolt in her neck that they can't see because her hair is slightly obscured.
Nobody notices.
Yeah.
But this bolt in her neck is making her sick. So throughout her time here, she keeps running off abruptly, and she's like, runs away, and the Sliders are like, that's weird, where's she going? And it's because she has to like switch the chip out or she gets sick. Because as we come to find out, this is all a result of her brain on this other world. This double's brain has been swapped out partially with a computer, and because she can't get regular updates from the like mainframe, it's making her sick.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't very well explained, but basically she has these little chips that she attaches to her neck that are supposed to substitute for being attached to the mainframe, but they aren't working very well, or they aren't working as she expected them to work. So she's still suffering the consequences of not being attached to the mainframe anyway, but then also was just sort of knew that they weren't going to work and that she was probably going to die anyway. and was fine with that because she wanted to escape her world so badly.
Yeah. And at some point, Rembrandt finally like clues in. He sees her the strange behavior, and I think he brings it up. Even I think he tells Quinn, he's just like, "Hey, she's acting really weird," and Quinn literally is just like, "Ignore it. Don't think about it." I was like, man, oh man, so funny. But he follows her, sees her switching out her neck chips. And when the Maggie double is discovered by Rembrandt, she just like screams for the Inquisition to take him away because he's a technology man. Take him away, Inquisition, and they do. And basically the double's just like saved again.
Yeah.
In fact, it's so funny because like she like the next time we see her, she's getting together with Quinn. They're really like playing up that romance that we've like seen on and off throughout these episodes, and she's like really leaning into it. And she's telling Quinn, she's like, yeah, I bumped into Rembrandt. We're not going to see him again. He said he loves it on this world and he's going to build a life here. So I hope you have no follow-up questions. And then Quinn's brother Colin walks in. He's like, hey, everybody, Rembrandt was arrested. And she's like, uh-oh, my lie got caught immediately.
Immediately. Like, they didn't even put a scene in between where Quinn is, like, trying to deal with the fact that maybe he's not going to see his friend again. Like, even, like, the most obvious writing thing where you could just put something in that would add a little bit to the character. It's like, no, we're going to say this thing, but then it's going to have no consequences because we're going to immediately find out that it's a lie. And then they're going to confront her, and then they're going to immediately just be like, but we'll help you.
Yeah, she just comes clean. As soon as she's caught in the lie, she's just like, I escaped my world because I hate this this like cyborg implants I got, which it's so funny. She talks about how like cruel it is and how evil it is they did this. Except we'll come to learn, like, it's all self-inflicted. Like, she volunteered to get all this done. So it's, like, really, like, so she's, like, really giving a sob story to them about, like, this awful world she had to leave where all this stuff happened. And then all the two sliders, like, Quinn and McConaughey, they're like, yeah, but, like, you sacrificed Rembrandt to die. Like, they're like, they listen to her sob story and are like, yeah, but you just did the most evil thing you could do. Like, why are we going to feel bad for you?
But then they do feel bad for her, and they are just like, we'll all help you and rescue Rembrandt.
And this is kind of what they do, is they go, it's all very quick. They go to stop Rembrandt from being thrown in the radioactive room for having technology. And, I mean, they have almost, like, no plan here. It's, like, the most poorly conceived concept. But Quinn just walks up as in front of everybody. He's just like, stop, everyone. Rembrandt and I are wizards called Remlio and Quintar, and we're very powerful, and also technology is a tool. It's neither good nor evil. I don't know what to do now, so give me the slide timer. I'm going to open the slide hole and scare you all, and we're going to slide away. And it's just like this bizarre moment. And once it's over, the funniest line of the show is Rembrandt turns to Quinn. He's just like, what were you doing up there? What were you saying? Quintar? It doesn't make any sense. And Quinn says, I don't know. I don't have any writers. What am I supposed to do? And I'm just like,
say that.
why are the writers commenting on the fact they're bad at their job?
And for a second, I was like, was there a writer's strike happening when this episode was written? Like, what's happening? But it's too early for the writer's strike. It was in the 90s, so it clearly wasn't that. But I thought it's the exact same thing. I'm like, who is writing that there are no writers? Like, is it just one of the writers just hates the show? So maybe the showrunner just like added it in because he hates the writers so much at this point.
It was bizarre. It was such a funny line to draw attention to the writing in the show. And before we go any further, can I surprise you with something? These two episodes we're watching were written in part or in full. I think we might have co-wrote them. I can't be 100% sure. But a writer named Chris Black wrote both of these episodes.
Okay.
You may have seen his work because he also writes for Severance on Apple TV.
No way.
Oh, man.
So his career got significantly better.
Yeah, well, either he learned how to be a better writer or somebody was undermining him in these episodes.
I think it just goes to show that just like the general marching orders on this show are just like, don't do a good job, just pound something out real fast and send it in. And I think that's like, it's just like there's no reason or rhyme. Like clearly there's some talent behind the man who wrote both of these episodes, but It's just like he was clearly been like, don't show it. Whatever you do, don't add your talent to these episodes.
Man, that's amazing. Yeah, because there was these episodes make so little sense in so many ways, and there's so many opportunities for expansion and interest that they just don't even bother with.
But yeah, that pretty much sums up the medieval world thing, is that the Sliders go to medieval world where technology is outlawed. They cannot notice Maggie is a double despite her completely acting differently. And when they finally figure it out, they very quickly just wrap it up and escape the world. So that'll bring us back to regular Maggie, the Maggie we know and love, Jordan.
Can I ask a question before we go further? So have you guys watched other episodes with Colin in it?
Only one. Colin comes in mid-season 4.
Right. So I had no idea who this guy was, and they don't actually mention in this episode that he is Quinn's brother. It's never mentioned.
You didn't recognize the familiar resemblance?
Well, I was like, why would they possibly cast a person that looks exactly like Jerry O'Connell? Because, like, literally every time Colin started speaking, I was watching this and I would think it was Jerry O'Connell, and then I would realize that it was the other guy. I'm like, you cannot cast two people that look the same.
It's because they were like, hey, you know how everyone likes Jerry O'Connell? What if we have a slightly worse actor who's slightly dumber and slightly worse in every way? Let's have him on screen too.
Yeah. Well, he is Jerry O'Connell's brother.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So which I found out afterwards. So I was like, okay, so clearly this is why they're doing this. But it just, from a storytelling, from a visual sense, it's like any movie, like, and I've seen this happen and it always fails. It's like when you have a movie that's like about two girls and the girls look the same. Like, it's stupid. Like, you have to make people look different so that when they're on screen, they create a different presence. And Jerry O'Connell and his brother, despite Jerry O'Connell being like a much better actor, they have the same on-screen presence, almost exactly. And it's stupid.
I'll tell you something I learned about him. I was watching this episode last night, and Jamie leaned over to me. She said, he was in The Bachelor. And it's true.
No way.
He was a bachelor in one of the seasons of The Bachelor.
The brother.
Yeah, in real life.
Oh my God. Did he end up with anybody?
I don't think so. I didn't look past that.
Right.
But apparently he was in The Bachelor.
Right.
So his career's going well.
That's very funny. Good to know he's out there doing stuff.
He's out there dating ladies.
It's just such a weird choice to bring this guy in who looks exactly the same as your lead. Sounds the same.
He also has no effect on this episode whatsoever.
No, he was a total sidekick. And that's the other thing I wanted to ask is, like, does he actually have any kind of personality whatsoever?
The episode we've seen him in, he was a lead character, but mostly because his double was a major character in it. But as far as I can tell, his character seems to have come from a world where he was a bit of a, I don't know, shut-in's not the right word, but he like feels like he was raised somewhere where he had no formal education, but was like kind of sheltered. So he says big words a lot, but he's very naive, seems to be his character. Like, he doesn't know the world very well, but I think he's supposed to be quite smart, maybe?
Okay.
He uses a lot of big words anytime they let him talk, which makes me think they're like implying something about him.
Right.
At any rate, shall we get on to see what our favorite Maggie's doing?
Mm-hmm.
She's been playing it cool while being grilled by her superiors, or the superiors of her double on this world. They want to know what happened to the missing chips, and she's pretty good. She like plays it down so they don't think she's responsible. And she quickly comes to learn that on this Earth, the Cold War apparently had ended at some point, but it's also restarted. So the Cold War is back. Thank God.
Okay, I got a question to start it off. Are our sliders, before we talk about doubles, what were they doing on this planet? Because they were in the facility, they were running around, they were doing something before they slid out and Maggie got doubled and the wrong one went. What were they doing?
Nothing. They weren't doing anything, they say.
Well, no, they were trying to get... They did say they were trying to get... Maggie was in the lab because she was trying to steal some tech or something from them. Because
that's what I mean.
Because this world...
No.
Yes, this world has quantum translocation, or is trying to develop quantum translocation.
No. They don't know that.
Well, no, but what were they doing? Because that's what they say. That's what they say. Because when Maggie, the fake double, comes back over, she mentions all this stuff, and she's obviously making it up. But it tracks, at least in some way, with what they were trying to do. Because they were like, what were you in the facility for? And she gives a lie. But the real Maggie had to be in the facility.
No.
They say, did you make it to the lab? And she's like, the lab? And they're like, yeah, the lab that we were trying to get you to break into. Remember that lab? There's a whole thing that happens.
No, here's what happens is that at some point they'll say the double Maggie happened to see her double walk by. And as we've seen these late episodes, if all these doubles now see like their alternate real world people, and they don't panic, they don't get upset, they just immediately take advantage of the idea a double exists. And Maggie's double says she saw her double walk by, she knocked her unconscious, put on her clothes, and then went to steal the tech. And then when they see her at the end, they're like, where, just before they slide the sliders, like, where were you? I don't understand where you went to. And she's like, oh, this world has quantum technology. I was stealing it for, like, the sliders weren't doing anything. They literally, Maggie wandered off, got knocked out, and then this other lady came in and just made up all these excuses.
No, because their Maggie was in the facility and came across the fake Maggie in the facility.
No, she was outside. She got knocked out outside.
What? I don't think
I'm
you're right.
I'm sort of with Jane on this, but regardless, let's say that's all correct, and maybe it is. So she gets knocked out, she gets interrogated. What would be the first thing you do? You'd say, I'm not your person, blah, 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 give some excuse. But she, without a beat, sort of just takes up the character of who the other Maggie is.
Yeah, she does the exact opposite of fake Maggie. Like, fake Maggie is just being herself and doesn't care if she gets caught. And real Maggie is immediately trying to blend in, and she does it actually quite well.
Well, it's not that hard for her. Like, this is who she used to be, was a fighter pilot. Like, it's pretty easy to fall into that role.
Oh.
Yeah, but not really. Right. If she wasn't a fighter pilot that was like half robot that had to plug herself in,
yeah, but
that
they don't
no one
ask
notices.
Her any questions about the robot part first. They're just like, ask her, like, did you see anyone breaking in? And she's just like, I saw some people. She just throws suspicion off herself.
Yeah.
I don't know. What I'm saying is, I don't think it works very well. I think there's some real plot holes here.
I like that you're arguing that she should just immediately say, I'm a slider, which we've complained about them doing every single time.
Well, it's not so much that, but I just don't think it makes sense with a world as complicated as it is with this technology. I don't think it makes sense that she would be able to blend in so well. So I think I just think it's a more interesting thing for her to do than just have everyone in the world be stupid and just think she's the same person. I don't know. I just think there's more interesting ways you can do this.
This was the least offensive part of the episode, I thought.
I don't know.
At any rate, despite our conflicted ideas of why the sliders were here and what they were doing, Maggie basically does manage to blend in to this new world where she kind of learns the general gist is like they're back at war, a cold war with Russia, and they're worried there are spies everywhere, military tensions are high, and she learns quickly her double is a pilot that got this special computerized brain implanted so that essentially she can fly drones. Like, this whole world is just like, what if we had drones, but the only way to fly them was to plug them into your brain?
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a really awesome version of this episode that doesn't exist, where you actually see fighter pilot stuff happening. So where like they plug in as pilots and then you're transported into the cockpit of the drone and they fly around and have dogfights and do stuff, and she like bonds with the guy that she's like her flying partner that she's flown with for the last 3 years, and they do all this stuff, and then they come back out and it's, they've been strapped to these machines the whole time because it's all like essentially like a VR simulation thing. But that didn't happen. What they had instead was they had a set that was like a room with like some wires and some people lying on like, cots or gurneys, and these tiny little CRT monitors that had like old like footage of some random little dogfight on it that was like 3 inches by 3 inches. And this is what we have to watch as an audience when we're watching these pilots do these maneuvers. We have to watch like a screen inside a screen of like these little tiny brown dots fighting and a few little target animations, and then it's over. And I was very sad about that.
It's even funnier than that too, Jen, because when they show the barracks, and they're like, these are our, I believe they call them neurosims, where we practice dog fighting while we sleep. And her partner, this like guy, we'll never see him again, but he's like apparently her co-pilot. He's like, well, I'm going to go to bed and use my neurosim. And he leans over and we see like the monitor ready to go. He's like, time to start the sim. And they literally show the interface screen for a VCR. It literally says SLP in the corner, super long play. And then the play button starts and the tape starts running. He's like, time to start the sim. I'm just like, you guys just used a VCR? That's what you guys use to do a sim?
I did not notice that. That's hilarious.
I was blown away. I was like, nobody's trying anymore.
No, the playback guy is just hitting the button right on camera.
And speaking of no one trying, on the medieval world, no one notices that Maggie has a big chip in her neck, and in this world, no one notices that Maggie doesn't have a chip, even though there's multiple scenes where like you could just see her bare neck, and no one's like, wait a minute, are you supposed to have a little chip there?
Yeah, and her hair was like tied back or something in this world too. It wasn't even
Literally, there's a scene at the end of this where like they have to undress her and put her on like an operating table, and it's not till like a 10-minute conversation at the very end of it she's like, hey, don't you notice I don't have a neck thing? And the doctor's like, yeah, that's weird.
but they're also just like, oh, we just thought you removed it because you're a traitor. But it's like, there's not even a scar on her neck. Like, what are you even saying? Made no sense.
Anyway, Maggie decides she's going to sneak around the base because she's stuck here. She's not sure what to do. She's barely fitting in. And this is why I know they weren't looking for anything when they were there. Because she says she's just like, I'm going to look around and just see if they happen to be also doing sliding research here. She has no idea if they are, but she's like, I'm just going to look around randomly and hopefully maybe there's also sliding research happening here.
I think that she knows that there is, because I wrote down quantum translocation from the teaser section.
Yeah, that's just because that's what the double said.
Okay.
Because she's like, I'm hoping maybe they're also doing sliding technology here. And of course, they are in fact doing some sliding research here. And not only are they doing sliding research here, her dead ex-husband is doing the research. Though you wouldn't know it because it's a different actor playing him, so it takes a quick second.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That was a real thing where you're supposed to have this like emotional beat of like, oh, it's my ex-husband, and it's like, I've never seen this man before in my life.
I know. I was also like watching him, just like they're really framing this guy in a way like I should know him, but I don't know who this is. And I'm like, oh, I see. They couldn't get the guy back, so it's a new guy.
So, did you guys watch the episode where she started on the show?
We did.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we did.
Okay. So you know what her backstory is. She's from a different world or something.
Yes. Well, the episode where she joins the show is the same episode where they kill Rembrandt. It's a 1-for-1 trade, so we got to see both of those things.
Arturo. They killed Arturo.
Oh, Arturo, I apologize.
Right, okay.
Anyway, so she's finding her ex-husband. He's dead. You know, we're supposed to be getting some emotional, she's so happy to see him. And we get to learn a little more about her double, that apparently on this world, the double Maggie broke up with her husband because she was desperate to become this cyborg drone pilot. And then the husband reveals, he's like, and then you got so mad at me because you were mad at me for turning you into the cyborg you asked to be turned into. And I was just like, this double Maggie is not a very likable character.
No, she's clearly not very self-reflective at all.
And we come to learn that the procedure of turning your brain into a computer is not great. A lot of the pilots are apparently tending to die, and we quickly see that as they test it, a pilot dies on the table trying to pilot these drones. So the superiors come in and say, this isn't working. Let's move on to the next stage of experimentation. And they just take Maggie in. They're like, here's the next stage. We're just cutting people's heads off and putting them in jars. And they're just becoming, what do they call them? Organic flight computers. Also, it's your turn to have your head lobbed off and put into a jar. And they're like, so get ready for that, I guess.
Yeah, that was quite horrific. I was just like, how is this even... I mean, I get... okay, you're trying to kind of make some kind of ethical statement about this, but it was because everyone seemed to be volunteering for this. I was like, oh, I guess these guys volunteered to have their heads cut off and be put in jars.
I have a question. Doesn't the chip get wet in that jar? That jar of liquid?
It's waterproof.
Oh, it's waterproof. Okay, that is fine. Then cut their heads off. Yeah,
they got waterproof technology on this earth. It is very funny. They present it to her very matter of fact. They're like, well, now we're gonna chop off your head. I'm like, would this have been okay with the other Meg? I don't think so. I don't know why you guys are like, yeah, you're ready for this, right?
Yeah, except that everyone was willing to do it. Like, it was part of what they expected to have happen, maybe.
I think it's because they're all patriots. They really are leaning into it. It's like, you're all patriots, so you're very excited to have your heads lobbed off to fight the Soviets. But yeah, as you said, this is the moment where they lift her hair up and they're like, oh wait, you don't have a chip. And she's like, well, it's because I'm a slider. And they're like, no, I think it's because a Luddite terrorist took it out. But yeah, we're still cutting your head off.
Yeah.
And we finally cross the stories back over. The sliders return to this world with the double. They've left anti-tech world. And one of my favorite things is they get back and they're like, well, we got to break into the facility. They're like, yeah. Quinn, pull off the electronic lock, disable it for us. And he pulls a a panel off this lock. She's like, hand me those wires. I'm going to plug them into the chip in my neck. And I'm like, oh, cool. She's going to hack the locks with the computer in her brain. And they plug it in and they're like, what are you doing? She's like, oh, I'm sending an email to my ex-husband. I'm like, she plugged those wires into her brain to send an email? And that's what she does. She sends an email.
It's a great email. It's like, come help me right now at the door. And then he comes to the door. But before we go any further, can I just ask you guys, because you must know the answer to this, how are they able to decide what world they're going to? How are they able to go back to a place they already were at? Is this something they figured out how to do now?
They've sort of, in one of the episodes, they sort of added a piece where some tech they picked up allows them to like follow wormholes they've already, either someone's used on that world or ones they've come through. So they have some like loose information on how to like not pinpoint where they're going.
But they can't just backtrack themselves all the way home at this point if they can't
well,
go
you would
backwards?
think so, but they haven't thought of that idea yet.
Gotcha. All right.
I guess the problem with that is one of the worlds they definitely went to exploded, so they probably can't go back to that world.
So that's a dead end now at this point. I see.
There we go. We solved the problem. That's why they can't do it.
Okay. Because I was totally thrown by that, because I was like, oh, they're never going to be able to get back and find, she's left behind. Like they'll never get her. And then they just didn't really even say anything and just went back.
It's just part of the show now. You just go along with it. You're just like, okie dokie, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
You make fun of her email though, but it was very effective because he comes down like in 10 seconds. Like he's like me. If I get an email, I see it right away. So he's checking his email. He's hitting refresh all the time, and he's out the doorway, opens it for them. So I was like, pretty good email.
I also thought of you too. I was just like, just send this email to Jordan at 2 a.m. He's gonna get out of bed. He's gonna go do it right that second.
Yeah, you got to. Email comes in. You got to deal with it.
Everyone knows emails are the most highest priority thing in your life.
You know what's funny? On a side note, I always have to remind myself that not everyone does that. Like I get emails and I'm like, I'm on emails all day, and then other people like they haven't written me back in a week. I'm like, I don't understand. Their emails in front of them. They just don't answer it right away. They don't answer it in 30 seconds. Anyways, me and this doctor could be friends.
Anyway, the doctor sees them and he's like, oh my God, sliders are real. Maggie was right. Sliding's things. And they're like, let's team up. And there's like a hard cut where we miss the point where they're like, let's come up with a plan on how to save Maggie. But like, we just jump from them meeting to like what the plan is in motion.
Yeah, it was a very bizarre like switch to a new scene.
Yeah. What we see is the plan's in effect. They've got Maggie laid on a table. I guess they're going to do the experiment where they're going to chop off her head. The superior officer's there waiting for it to happen. We see all our other characters are wearing like surgical masks in the background because they're like blending in as like nurses or whatever. So we know the plan's in effect. And my favorite part is they've got Maggie laying on a table. And I'm like, which Maggie? It's got to be the one that doesn't have an implant. And you look down and it's the one with an implant because they've run stuff into her neck. And I'm just like, does the superior officer not realize this woman who just had no neck implant now has a neck implant again?
Yeah, I think maybe Steven lied and pretended that he had reinstalled her implant or something.
Fair enough. And they do a thing that I expected. It was just like, you know, I'm like, oh, they're going to fake her death so they can like, you know, help double Maggie escape because they'll fake her death and then like they can escape. You know, it's a perfectly natural plan. And then I came to realize as I'm watching it, I'm like, oh, no, wait. They're actually like temporarily killing double Maggie. So the superior thinks because like the superior's like, oh, she died in the process. Well, I guess we'll have to find someone else. And she walks out and they're like, all right, real quick, bring her back to life. I'm like, oh, you guys couldn't fake her dying? You guys actually killed her for 10 seconds?
Yeah, it's a good thing they knew that the superior wasn't going to hang out in that room for very long. Otherwise, their entire plan would have been foiled.
I know. I was like, I want an autopsy right now.
I think they just figured like worst case, they'll find another Maggie, another planet.
This ex-husband's not going to, though. She's losing his one Maggie.
That's true.
Yeah, but he didn't care about her at all until 3 hours before. Because they had a falling out, and he didn't want to deal with her anymore. So,
all's forgiven, Jane. All's forgiven.
Clearly.
Anyway, the plans work. They've double Maggie now. Her death's been fake, so she can escape her horrible fate as being a drone pilot and run away with her alive husband. Regular Maggie's reunited with the Sliders, and the two Maggies finally get to meet and like have an apology for like knocking her out and stealing her life. And they do one of the most poorly executed split screens I've ever seen.
Well, I think the major issue is their eyes don't line up at all. Like, not only do they seem like they might be slightly different sizes, but they're looking in completely different directions. And I was like, "Ooh, guys! Like, I've seen stuff from the '70s that did this better."
Yeah, and then one of the Maggies looks away before the conversation is even over. Like they didn't even get the timing right. And they're trying to play it like she's looking to like look at Quinn maybe, but it doesn't make any sense. She should be looking at herself and she looks way too early. Like it was bad. And yeah, one of them is way bigger than the other one. It's a weird perspective.
It was very funny. I was just like, well, this didn't go well either. And anyway, they all slide away, and that's the end of the episode.
But you know what? In the end, we learned a lot about Maggie.
Did we?
Nope.
Yeah, she misses her dead husband.
Nope. Yeah, we learned nothing.
Right? Because everything, I mean, I learned things by osmosis because I was new to this character in the show, but presumably everything a viewer of Sliders would have already known.
Well, Jane, forget everything you know, because it's time for the IMDb summary for Season 5, Episode 1, The Unstuck Man.
This one was just like a mind-blown situation. Okay, go for it.
Maggie, stop him. If he kills me, little Thomas will grow up without a father.
What did you mean by that?
I don't know. It just came out. We got married. Had a son. Named him after your father, the general. And you're Rembrandt. Rembrandt Brown. We've been together since the beginning. You're like a brother to me. A brother. I got a brother. I had a...
The Mallory brothers become separated from the rest of the Sliders when another person appears in the vortex with them. Quinn appears to have jumped into the body of himself in the world they arrive in, but the fate of his brother remains unknown. And that was courtesy of Chapman_Glenn.
I'm going to say this reminded me a little bit, and Jane, I don't know if you listened to our podcast when we were doing Sequest, but Sequest had a big cast change, or at least the major character left, and all the characters died at the end of season 4, so they had to bring them back, and they had to do this like real mental gymnastics way of like getting people back. That's what this felt like, but executed the most poor way you could ever achieve it. Like, it's at all times way too complicated and also way too simple and dumb, and that's an amazing balancing act to be able to accomplish, to make this like really complicated and at the same time you're bored out of your mind because it's so stupid.
Yeah, I thought exactly the same thing, and I had listened to your Sequest stuff, so I thought of that a lot. But there was just, they spend so much time, this entire episode, just trying to technobabble away this casting change that they've made. And as a consequence, there's zero substance to the entire episode. And it's so boring.
It's one of the worst episodes of television. And I feel like I say this sometimes, but this has got to be top 3, top 5 worst episodes of television we watched on this podcast.
You do say that a lot.
Yeah. But the list keeps growing, but that's why it's like top 3 or 5, because there's some really bad ones. But this is a real stinker.
Yeah.
Well, it opens on the literal shadowy figure of Dr. Oberon Geiger. He's testing some sort of slide cannon on some world we've never been to. And I don't know if you guys ever watched Tim and Eric, but this guy looks exactly like Eric Wareheim from Tim and Eric. So it was really hard for me to watch this man because I was just like, am I watching a Tim and Eric sketch? Because it has the same level of depth and insanity of Tim. So I was blown away by this actor.
I don't know if anyone watched Babylon 5, but I didn't watch Babylon 5. But you know the guy with the big weird hair, Londo Mallory? He played him for all the episodes. That's who that guy is.
Oh, interesting.
Don't know who that is. Never seen him.
Babylon 5.
At any rate, he is basically got his own sliding stuff. We're like, oh, we're seeing some other sliding scientists on some other world, and they're about to do a test on some test subject. And he briefly is like, hold the countdown for a second. All right, now go again. And what this is we get a cut from his countdown to the countdown on the Sliders timer. And what we see is Rembrandt's holding it. They're on some sort of like world where they're all shooting all the time. I don't know what's happening. We don't really have any sense, but we just know the Sliders are on the run from someone because they're firing guns constantly. And very quickly we see that Rembrandt and Maggie are there. But then we get cutaways to Quinn and Colin where we very clearly are not showing their faces. It's all legs and the backs of heads.
Yeah.
And I believe Quinn says one line of dialogue, and it is quite clearly not Jerry O'Connell saying that line of dialogue.
Yeah, it wasn't a very well executed a fake of the two brothers.
Yes. They clearly have left the show, but the slide hole opens, they jump in, and for the first time ever, I think, Jordan, anyway, the episodes we've seen, we see scenes happening inside the slide hole.
Yeah.
And we had just talked about this. We just talked about this in the last episode, that we've never seen it, and then we get an extended sequence of them floating. So now we know what it kind of looks like. We
know when they get some time inside it, they can hang out, they can chat when they're sliding. And while they're in there, we're told later that they see an explosion. But what we kind of see in the actual show is that, like, somewhere behind them, the doubles they've hired to play the Mallory brothers, just out of focus, are floating behind them, and they seem to be sucked into a different hole. That's what we see. Later, we'll get a different explanation for what happens. But what it really looks like is they're sucked out of the slide hole. And then Rembrandt and Maggie emerge on a different Earth. They can't see their friends anywhere. And they turn around, and that test subject we saw in the cold open is standing in a river next to them. And he's just like, "Who are you guys?" "'Cause I'm Quinn Mallory." And we're like, "Oh my God, what a twist." And we go to the credits.
Yeah.
And then the credits have only Rembrandt and Maggie in them.
This is my favorite part.
So
is that, like,
funny.
Rembrandt's taken over the monologue in the opening, and I was just like, you guys should have just called it Rembrandt Sliders now. This should just be like, center Rembrandt, it's Rembrandt Sliders, he gets to run the show now.
Yeah, and they have all the montages, only stuff where Rembrandt and Maggie are in frame together. There's no, like, I don't know if it was actually footage from previous episodes or maybe footage from this episode, but just, like, there's nobody, like, it's like there was never anybody else ever on the show.
I will say this for them, and they did this better than Sequest did, is at least they hide the fact they're going to add 2 new cast members by not including them in the opening credits, which is something Sliders or Sequest didn't do. When they switched seasons and changed the cast, they just put the whole cast up front when you didn't know who had survived. It was kind of a letdown, or at least on Sliders, they're like, we've lost the 2 O'Connell brothers. They don't want to be on the show anymore. They're definitely gone. So is this just going to be Rembrandt and Maggie from now on? I don't know. Tune in to find out.
Yeah. And I thought it was. I was surprised that they ended up adding team members by the end of this.
Back to the show. We get to meet this all test subject Quinn, who, he's saying he's Quinn Mallory. He's clearly played by a different actor, and we'll get an explanation for kind of what he saw happen inside of the slide hole. Not what we, the audience, saw, but our explanation is apparently when they were in there, he was beamed into the same slide hole. Colin burst into thousands of tiny little Collins and then disappeared. We didn't see that, but that's what we're told happened. And that apparently their normal Quinn, the Jerry O'Connell Quinn, then merged with the body of this new Quinn. And we quickly come to find out this new Quinn is, like, suffering from, like, multiple personalities. Apparently both Quinns are now inside of his head, because he starts talking about, like, a slide he went on with Maggie, and they're like, "Who are you? Are you our Quinn or a new Quinn?" Like, we're very quickly, they're just like, Colin's gone, Quinns have combined into this new guy, we're replacing Quinn with a new Quinn. Like, there some really weird stuff happening very quickly off the bat.
Have they ever had a situation before in which a double didn't actually look like the person?
I'm trying to think,
because that also has to be something that they have to explain. It's like, there's a Quinn Mallory in this world. It's this guy, but he's not being played by Jerry O'Connell. He looks like a completely different actor.
It's kind of hard to say, in that they've definitely had doubles that don't look like the original, but no one ever comments on it. Like, they've in the past replaced actors with new actors and then not commented on it.
Right.
Like, Quinn's mom changed in season 2.
I remember that.
And then changed back to the original actress at some point. So, like, they've up till now have decided not to make a big deal of it. Like, they're like, we recast Batman. He's the same Batman. He just looks different. Let's not comment on it. This is the first time they're ever like, well, you don't look like the man we know.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing that confused the hell out of me is that what we don't, at least what I didn't realize for the first 10 minutes of this episode, is that where they landed is this Quinn Mallory's world. Like,
that was very confusing.
That was super confusing, because he met them in the slide hole. So I'm like, okay, he's sliding, they're sliding. Now they're ending up together in this other new world. But then it turns out that they're still in his world, and he knows that they're in his world. He's not confused about, like, I found it super weird and unclear.
Yeah, they go into LA. There's, like, a climate apocalypse happening that people barely comment on, but there's like a climate apocalypse happening. They go to the hotel they always go to. Jordan, the same bartender from Lipschitz Live, is working there.
Yeah, that's right. That was at least consistent.
You were happy to see
they get
him.
that actor back. They couldn't get Jerry O'Connell back, but they got that guy.
For the listener, Jordan's sending private messages in the chat to Jane that I'm not privy to, but Jane's replying to everyone, so I know they're happening.
They're not about you, Luke. Don't worry.
It doesn't seem like it.
We're writing our own little fan fiction in the chat.
So Jordan's putting his full effort into the podcast. But yeah, they end up at this new place. And like you said, Jane, it seemed like they were on a new world where an apocalypse was happening. I was like, okay, well, here's the plot. They've got a new guy, Apocalypse. And then the test subject Quinn's cell phone rings, and he picks it up, and he's just like, hey, everybody, the lab's sending a van to pick us up. And that was when I was just like, wait, where are they?
Yeah, that's when I realized, too, that they were on his world. But then I actually thought it was even more complicated. I'm like, oh, maybe they gave him an interdimensional cell phone so that when he arrives in the other world, he can have a conversation. No, they're just driving over to pick him up.
I thought the same thing. I'm like, interdimensional cell phone, cool. And they're like, and he's like, they're sending a van. I'm like, oh, never mind.
But also, this kid is an idiot. Like, this Quinn Mallory is slow and dumb. And not only, I think it's like, okay, maybe he's being slow and dumb because his brain has been fused with the other Quinn Mallory, and there seems to be a little bit of confusion about who he is or whatever. But throughout the entire episode, it's extremely unclear to me, and clearly also to him, like, that he seems to have volunteered for this, that this was something that he had agreed to do, like that he works at the company that has put him in the slide hole, and what that company does, and his relationship with this Dr. Geiger who hides out behind a screen. Like, it literally changes every single time we have a scene with him, how he feels about it and what he thinks about it. It made zero sense to me.
Well, here is what we come to learn. Is they get to the lab and they meet the assistant director, Dr. Diana Davis, who I think we know very quickly is going to become another main character by the end of the episode. We'll figure this out before the episode's over. And she tries to provide some exposition. It doesn't quite explain why New Quinn is dumb, but what is happening on this Earth is this Dr. Geiger has been using the slider technology to, quote, extract healthy DNA from transdimensional alternates to cure illnesses. And this New Quinn, this Quinn we've just met, he's one of the early test subjects who's been successful on because he used to have incurable muscular dystrophy.
This was funny.
Which we never saw. Like, when we saw him going into the slide hole, he was just walking into this pod where they put him in the slide hole. But then they keep talking about how he used to be in a wheelchair.
This is before this episode started.
Again, it would have just been a good line of dialogue. He should just walk in through and be like, God, this MS is terrible. Anyways.
Or just put him in a wheelchair in the first scene before he gets sent into the slide hole. Have him be in a wheelchair. Have him look like he needs assistance. And then when he comes out, he can walk. I don't understand why that was his whole storyline, but they never actually showed him having any issues at the beginning.
But honestly, if you gave me $1 million, I would never have guessed that in 5 years. I'd be watching after 5 seasons, Sliders would have cured MS. You know?
Well, they've done it using a device called the Combine, which apparently is able to take pieces of other worlds and bring them to this world permanently. This Dr. Diana Davis, she theorizes that what happened this time was when they shot new test subject Quinn into the wormhole, he merged with old Quinn, and that's why we're seeing their brains have mixed together. And then she starts talking about, like, you know how he said he saw Colin break into 1,000 pieces? I'm pretty sure what happened to Colin is that he's become unstuck in space and time and will spend the rest of his life involuntarily jumping dimensions. And I was just like, what? I'm sorry, what has happened?
Yeah, he's now a Kurt Vonnegut character for some reason. Also, what a horrible thing for him. Apparently, that's when they get rid of characters, they just give them, like, horrible exits.
But she's like, don't worry, we've dealt with this before. Dr. Geiger is also unstuck from time, and we just hold him in a force field shadow box to keep him on this Earth. And I'm just like, oof, lots going on so far. Lots going on.
Oh, and let me just say real quick, I know that this went on from Fox to the Sci-Fi Network by season 4, and this is the second season on Sci-Fi. But man, it looks like they cut the budget by like 75%, even from episode 4 to the season 4 to this one. Like, It looks like they had $20. Like that booth looked terrible. It looked, the whole episode looked so bad. It looked like an episode of Lex.
It looked
Am I
like
right?
they had repurposed some old like props from the 70s to put in behind in Diana's office. There was like a box with lights on it that were like flashing different colors. It looked like some kind of early like almost like original Star Trek level tech.
Yeah, it was bad.
They
really
cleaned
bad.
out a supply closet somewhere and just put this stuff in the room.
This is their premiere episode too, so they spent the most money they had on this episode.
Well, I think they spent all their money on that inside the slide hole sequence.
We know Dr. Diana Davis is a good guy because she promises to do everything she can to both unstick Colin or stick him back to time, however that would work. And then she's like, and I'm going to do my best to unmerge the two Quinns for you if I can. But our new Quinn, our new dumb Quinn, he goes to see Dr. Geiger, and we quickly come to learn Dr. Geiger's not so good because he reveals that he purposely merged the two Quinns together because he's testing to see whether he's able to merge universes, because his intention is to cure his unstuckness by merging all the multiverses into a single monoverse. This is his evil plan, monoverse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and but as Quinn immediately points out, he doesn't seem to have accounted for the fact that there will be an infinite mass that is acquired by combining all these universes together, and then the world will just be destroyed. But Geiger's like, ha, that's my plan. It doesn't matter. I'm going to do it.
Yeah, it's just technobabble for the sake of being like, we've thought it all through, everyone. We promise.
Well, I think they had to come up with a reason why him combining universes was evil and not good, because they've just explained like, oh, we can cure diseases by combining people. And now they have to be like, oh, actually it's evil because it's going to destroy everything. And they also had to show that Quinn Mallory was still inside this guy's head, because as Geiger's...
Dumb Quinn is now Smart Quinn.
Yeah, Dumb Quinn... Well, Dumb and Smart Quinn just seem to fluctuate back and forth whenever necessity arises in the plot. And if you want to have Smart Quinn, then maybe he'll say a few smart things to help the exposition along, but then he'll revert back to Dumb Quinn when you need him to be dumb.
And you need him to be dumb quite a lot, because he goes back to tell Maggie and Rembrandt what he's discovered, and Maggie and Rembrandt are like, oh no, he's going to merge all the worlds, but we only have an hour and 10 minutes till we slide, so we're kind of in a real pickle here. And they go to talk to Diana about it. They go to just be like, your boss seems a little evil, and they get caught on security cameras, so Dr. Geiger brings Maggie and Rembrandt to see him, and it's so weird. Like, they've just been told this man wants to combine all universes into one, which seems bad. And then Dr. Geiger's like, no, you guys need to calm down. Maybe we'll fix your problem, but why don't you all get into this stasis universe and just let me fix these things? And Maggie and Rembrandt don't question it. They're just like, we won't give you the timer, but we'll all get in front of your slide gun and go into stasis for some reason. Like, they give in to this bad guy for no apparent reason.
But they hold hands when they're in the universe. They're like, they go to like purgatory or something.
Yeah, and they get in there and they're like, did the slide timer stop? And Rembrandt's like, no, it was a trick. I'm like, all right, great.
Well, it's why they shouldn't be the lead characters of a TV show.
Well, it's just so funny is we've complained, Jordan, that often Maggie and Rembrandt have been shunted to the side because they don't know what to do with them. They are now the only returning characters. And in their pilot episode, or their first season episode, they are sent to an alternate dimension stasis universe for a period of this episode, so the other characters can have more time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just so obvious that like neither of those characters have any real knowledge about the slide machine or the mech or the science behind it. They have zero agency in any of this, all of these plots involving how they're going to slide and do that, the other thing. They can't like be like, oh, let's try to fix the timer, or let's try to reconfigure this so it'll be this, or let's try to get Quinn out of this other Quinn by doing a thing. They can't do any of that because they're just these like passive observers. They're, the comic relief. They're the sidekicks, and they just float around in this episode, also not doing anything.
If the characters had grown at all over the course of several seasons, they could have developed more interesting personalities, and maybe that could have been the show that, yes, they're not geniuses or they're not scientists, but they now have other skills that we know as a viewer as we've watched these characters grow, and this is a different type of show where they solve problems in a different way. I mean, you could maybe watch that, but kind of to Luke's point, it's like characters who they didn't know what to do with for several seasons. Now they're just like, oh, they're the only ones we have left. Let's just put them in a stasis so they still don't have anything to say.
Well, with them in stasis, New Quinn goes and he tells Dr. Diana, he's like, Geiger wants to merge LA with another LA just to see what happens. And she goes to confront him about that. And he's just like, Diana, just let me try it. And she's like, oh, okay, I guess I will. But dumb Quinn uses this as a distraction so smart Quinn can come out of his brain. And he tries to hack the system, but that, like, he's immediately caught and dragged into that, like, same set where everyone's hanging out. And it's so weird. They're like, oh, Quinn, you tried to hack the system. Very bad. I'm going to also put you in this stasis dimension. And he turns on the machine again, and then Rembrandt and Maggie reappear because apparently, I don't know, it's just to get them back in the series, in the scene. And then Dr. Diana's like, well, I can tell you're evil, so I'm going to point the slide gun at you. And they shoot Dr. Geiger, and he, like, the worst special effect of him, like, breaking to pieces happens. And they've, like, saved the day, I guess. Like, they stopped the countdown. It just all kind of just happens abruptly at the end that, like, they defeat Geiger.
It happens so quickly. There's a security guard. People are getting punched. There's a gun. And literally when they shoot the gun at Geiger, he goes, no, and disappears.
This is what I was thinking. It was like, this is Tim and Eric level of effects. And, like, I'm just watching a guy who looks like a Eric Ware. It's so weird. Anyway, they've now all got back together because they've stopped the timer. They cut away to LA where I forgot a climate apocalypse was happening. And, like, the weather gets better. And everyone's like, yay, the apocalypse is over. And I'm like, was that a plot still?
They kept it wasn't even a plot, but it was almost like a comic relief bit where there were these people at a bar and they were watching television and they were watching the news and the news was reporting on the weather. And then they would say, like, there's a cloud coming. Oh, it's getting windier. It's like the world was ending, but they're not actually saying the world's ending on the news. They're just saying that the weather's getting really bad.
Yeah.
And every time they say it, the people at the bar take a drink in unison all together at the same time. And then at the end, when it's like, hey, the weather's cleared up, everything's going to be fine, all the people at the bar are like, yay, and they take another drink. And, like, they do this, like, 4 times, and that's just the joke. I guess it's supposed to be funny.
I know. It's very weird. It's very weird. The listener can't tell, but Jordan's ex-wife just emailed him from the door, so he's got to go get it.
What's that?
I said the listener can't tell, but Jordan's ex-wife just emailed him from the door, so he's got to go get it.
Oh, yeah, I gotta go. That's right.
Check your email real fast.
That's pretty good.
Anyway, the problem's solved. The slide timer's hitting 0, but they still haven't figured out what to do with the problem they can't solve. We, the viewer, know they can't solve the fact 2 actors left, but they still have this idea that there's a weight to that because they're like, we've lost our 2 main characters. So Rembrandt and Maggie have to slide. The new Quinn immediately is just like, well, I'm going to slide with you because old Quinn's in my brain and maybe we can all travel together and, I don't know, find something. And they turn around to this Dr. Diana Davis and they're like, hey, you're a scientist. We could use one of those. Do you want to come with us too? And she's like, I guess so.
Which also makes no sense because she's just defeated Geiger and she would probably now be made head of the lab. She was the assistant lab director. Now she could be the director of the lab. She could have her career. She could, like, help cure people of muscular dystrophy and do all the things. But instead of doing that, she just decides to jump into the slide hole.
I believe Maggie bullies her by saying, it's like, don't you want to learn science on the ground? She's like, I guess so.
I guess I'll just leave my whole family and everybody that I knew because I'm a character that had no actual ties to anybody else and I was just functional as a scientist.
She does grab a bunch of instruments before she jumps into the slide hole, so I'm assuming they're going to be like later on if they need to pull that out of their back pocket. They're like, oh, she pulled a transmogrifier, and that helps us mask our faces when we go to Dinosaur World. It'll be something like that, I'm assuming.
It was very funny. She was like, I need some equipment, and she just runs over and grabs some random things off a shelf. I'm like, what did you just grab?
Yeah, well, she went into Dr. Geiger's area that had previously been screened off, and like it was like some of his stuff, I guess. Mm-hmm. So
paperweights.
Yeah. So she's ready to go. But clearly, again, no family, no friends, not a care in the world, just jumps on.
But now we're ready to go. We're ready to go for season 5. We've got a whole new cast and we're ready to roll. Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. Good luck,
Yeah.
guys, with these. How many more of these do you have to watch?
Well, we're going to find out because unless you guys have any final thoughts on these 2 episodes, we're going to rate them.
Oh yeah, let's
Okay.
rate them.
So, Jane, Slide by Wire, the season 4 episode where they go to Anti-Tech World.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a couple of points because I could tell they were trying with this relationship with Maggie and the husband, and there was trying to be a bit of a personal story there. But the whole rest of it, again, was just like all just functional plot. Nothing for any reason. So I think I'd probably give it a 3.
A 3. Jordan, how are you feeling about it?
You know, I feel the exact same way. I'm also going to give it a 3. And I think those 3 points are all for Jerry O'Connell be handsome. That's it.
That's the last you're ever going to see of it.
That's all. You know what? You have to give it to points. There's the last episode we can give him points. So he's not in the next one. So 3.
Well, you guys, it's a perfect score because I'm also giving it a 3. I think of late season Sliders, this is one of their more functional episodes for what it's worth, but it's no better than a 3.
Yeah.
All right, well, what about the first episode of season 5, The Unstuck Man, Jane? You got to see it. You got to see the final season start.
This was so bad. It was so bad. And nothing, like, things just made no sense. They just wrote themselves in circles until they had enough pages to make the script that was the length that it needed to be and put the commercial breaks in where they needed to be and then just filmed something. So I'm going to give this a 1.5.
1.5. Jordan?
I think that was a very well said and articulate way of saying exactly how I feel. The only thing that was wrong on it was that 0.5. 1 out of 10.
1 out of 10. Yeah, I mean, it's a bad episode. There's something perversely enjoyable about watching this like show just flounder wildly as it adds new characters and has to like. It's so funny watching the doubles of Quinn and Colin. Like they're like we're gonna keep them in the episode because we need to write them off somehow. But I'm just like, you, the viewer, are just sitting there being like, well, those aren't the real actors. What has happened between seasons?
Yeah.
This was the equivalent of like, this was, Luke, just to cut you off, it was like watching like a professional athlete who's now like 95 years old and he comes back for like one more game in the pros and you're like watching this like decaying, dying person. You're just like, what is this? Like, just put him out of his misery.
That's how you felt about the whole the show as a whole. Was a decaying, dying
that's
person.
right.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not good. There are some perversely weird things to watch and be like, I can't believe any of this is happening. I'm going to go 2, I think. It's not the worst thing we've ever watched for this podcast, I don't think.
It's up there, though.
All right. Well, Jane, Jordan, we have now watched a bunch of kind of our return to Sliders. We've done 3 full podcasts on it. And as per what we discussed earlier, we're going to check the escape pod. We're finally at the point where we're going to check the escape pod because Sliders was doing so poorly before. And we'll see where we are now. I don't think they've gotten better, but we'll check the series average and see if we're taking this escape pod.
Okay.
All right. The series average right now for Sliders is 4.12. So we're going to take the escape pod.
Whoa! I just helped you guys torpedo Sliders right into the ground. Look at that. I could have rated this like a 7 or 8 and you would have had to stick with it. If I wanted to be mean about it, I could have done that. But
I'm not sure there's a rating
grateful.
you could have given it that would have saved it. It's been getting progressively worse and really sliding down the score ratings. And you gotta think about this. And Jane, you saw the pilot.
Yeah.
It was a highly rated pilot for us. To see it now, this embarrassment it's become.
I am shocked at how much it floundered because it had so much potential. It had in the pilot had all this great stuff with like the older scientists and young Jerry O'Connell and the girl who was like kind of a bit of a tomboy. She was fun. She was interesting. She was a geek. Like Rembrandt was funny. Like it was actually a really great dynamic team. And then it just all went flat so quickly.
Did you not watch this new Quinn Mallory, though? He's dumb and smart.
and smart at the same time, and also
Yeah.
whiny and angry for a lot of reasons that we don't really understand.
He's got a sharp haircut, though.
Seems awesome. And who is casting these shows? Like, you're recasting Jerry O'Connell with this dude, and like,
I know.
and this Maggie chick that you cast a couple of seasons ago is like the worst actress. Like, what is happening in television at this period?
I literally didn't look up the new Quinn because I'm sure I will have not seen him in anything, nor did he have a career. Sorry, new
No.
Quinn.
And like the woman who played Diana seemed kind of okay. I don't know what happened to her either later on.
I read the IMDb for this, and there was a review that came up at the bottom that I read, and the person writing it was like pretty disappointed with how season 5 was going. Everyone was gone, and they're like, only 2 good points. New Quinn is hot, and so was that security guard. He was also hot. I was like, okie dokie.
I guess they had a different definition of hot in the mid 90s.
This might have been a very recent review.
Oh.
At any rate, this means we're going to jump ahead. We're going to watch the series finale of Sliders next week. We're going to wrap it all up there. We're going to see him become Typhoid Rembrandt. It's finally happening. If that fan fiction is accurate, Typhoid Rembrandt is coming.
Oh my gosh, I'd be interested to hear what it turns out like now that we've experienced this fan fiction, which is an alternate version of the... I'm just going to imagine that the fan fiction is an alternate version of the series finale.
I think the part that doesn't happen in the fan fiction is I think everything happens. They reveal the original Sliders all de-aged, and just one of the lines he added just to give it an extra bump.
That would be amazing.
In the meantime, since we're skipping out, we're going to end our Sliders run. There's still always a chance for you to make us watch more Sliders. Make sounds harsh, but it kind of is true. There's bonus episodes for charity. We're doing an initiative where people can donate money to a charity as selected by our past guests. Jane, did you select one of these charities?
I'm not sure. Might have.
We emailed everyone, and
You
not
did,
everyone
yeah.
got us a charity,
Yeah.
but some of them did. Maybe Jane's charity's on there. I don't know. We could promote it now, but we don't remember what it is.
No, I don't think I answered that email. Sorry.
I would have answered it immediately.
That's fine. Jane doesn't believe in charity, everyone. That's what you got to take away from this.
What I didn't actually believe that any charity that I would support, that you guys would actually put it on your website, so I didn't bother.
Jane's charities are very far right. We don't typically support them. She's supporting Insurrection 2, the sequel. That's what she's hoping to donate to.
That's it. That's exactly it.
But if you go to our website, continuingdrag.podbean.com, you'll find a list of charities. If you make a donation to one of those, we'll go back and watch an episode of your choosing that we either skip through, like in Sliders, where we haven't watched all of them. Maybe there's one you want us to watch. Or in some of our older shows where we've used the escape pod or done a best of, like UFO 2012. What was that show called? Project UFO.
Project UFO.
Maybe there's a great Project UFO you want us to watch. Who knows? That's a way for you to get a bonus episode to come out of your choosing. So go to the website, go to our social media. There's links there, and you can learn all the details. And if you have any questions, just email us here, continuingdrag@gmail.com, and we'll fill you in on the details. Other than that, on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, we're going to have clips from these 2 shows. You're going to probably see New Quinn. You're probably going to see Anti-Tech World. All the best bits of these episodes.
You definitely have to show this guy yelling, "No!" when he gets shot by the laser cannon.
That breaks into pieces. Yeah, that'll probably be there.
Yeah, but I don't even think did he break into pieces? Did they even have that on camera? I can't even remember. It was so cheap. Everything was so cheap.
They had some weird cheesy effect for it, for sure.
Yeah.
But that wraps up for this episode. So, Jane, thanks so much for joining us again for more Sliders. The end of Sliders you got to come in for.
Thanks for having me. I mean, I am happy to be here and disappointed that I had to be here under such circumstances as these terrible episodes of Sliders, but it was fun.
Well, misery loves company, right, Jordan?
Yeah, I guess.
Listener, thank you for joining us. And Jordan, I will see you next week.
See you then.
Continuum Drag is recorded in Toronto, Ontario, and Seoul, South Korea. Theme music by James Rick Seidler. Produced by Jordan Delick and Luke Black. Special thanks to Aaron Yunes.